So you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are slightly late, but that's okay, because so are all of you, since we all got here at the same time. And this should be the last episode of this series. So thank you for everyone who's been here all along the way. And if you haven't been, why not? What's wrong with you?
Maybe they just learned about your channel. It could happen.
Oh, impossible. Everyone knew about me from when Matt Powell said the air in space. But anyways, to joining me, of course, is my favorite producer, Peter, and the one, the only, the Dapper, the Dinosaur. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I am, of course, Dapper Dinosaur, the most frequent guest on this channel, who also is still not in the intro.
Oof.
I beat you to it. Well,
Yeah.
Beethoven did.
Ha ha. Ha ha ha. All right.
Cenozoic, let's do it.
Let's
Mammoths,
jump right in.
Humans, monkey,
Monkey.
birds.
None of the above. Carnivores.
I mean, there are carnivores. It's true. Aww.
Carnivora. All right, so Carnivora is an order of mammals, which includes the clades, the suborders Feliformes, which are the cat-like carnivorans. I think we talked about all those guys last time.
We did, but now we're getting a transitional pinniped, which I appreciate.
Yes, Puigila, which is very weaselly.
Or is it Puigila?
Doing sealy things. Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. Doing sealy things, but as a weasel, or doing weaselly things, but as a seal. Either way is correct.
Yeah.
And Hesperocyon, which is a canid that is a member of the dog and wolf and fox family, Canidae. So dogs are, modern dogs are digitigrade, whereas Hesperocyon was, I believe, plantigrade still. But like starting to transition towards digitigrade.
I believe it was one of those like facultatively digitigrade sort of things. And if you think that's weird, humans are facultatively digitigrade. Or did you forget about walking on your tiptoes?
Did you forget to grade?
Yeah. Also, some ballet dancers are facultatively unguligrade. So take that. It's true.
I guess that's true. That is true. Yeah, fair enough.
Turns out one anatomy can actually usually accommodate more than one style of locomotion in many animals.
That doesn't sound real.
Well,
the pinnipeds are the seals and walruses, in case you guys were unaware of that. Anything? So, and then you just have a big phylogeny of different. So Carnivora morpha, so not just the extant carnivorans, but also they're the stem carnivorans, because there are lots and lots and lots of them, and lots of different things called meiosis, which make it paraphyletic, or
which makes it fake.
Yep, which does make it fake. That is a fact, Jack. It's a Jack
Although I like
fact.
to think of it as an evolutionary grade, which, yeah, it's not a clade, but it is like an identifiable group. Because the idea with grades is that you can identify a certain group of organisms according to, like, very characteristic but still technically plesiomorphic characters. So that's why, like, Pelycosaur is a real thing, but it's still like a grade. You can still talk about the Pelycosaurs as long as you understand that you're not talking about a clade, but rather a sort of typical morphology for a certain period of time for a group of animals.
Indeed. All right. Next slide, please. Aha! The Miocene. Da, 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 da. So actually, my next video, the orangutan's tale, is going to talk about the Miocene in some detail. So here we are again. Or here we are the first time, which you will see again later.
Mm-hmm.
So the Miocene covers a period of 5.23 to 5.3 million years ago, and there were a couple major events. So Antarctica has fully separated from the other continents that were part of Gondwana, and it has cold currents around it, which are dragging its temperature down. Basically, the Miocene experiences a gradual cooling and drying, which then continues through the Pleistocene into the Holocene today, although we are doing our darndest to reverse that trend.
Look, humans are just trying to make sure they don't have another glacial maximum.
I mean, we're doing a pretty good job of it. I'll give you that.
It's not one of those coming up anytime soon.
But yeah, a couple of different things are happening. Like it says, the Arabian Peninsula collide with Eurasia, allowing for faunal interchange, so between Africa and Eurasia. Then you get this big supercontinent called Afro-Eurasia, which we still have, which is kind of neat. The Proto-Strait of Gibraltar closed, causing the Messinian salinity crisis from 5.96 to 5.33 million years ago. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that covered the bit about the Miocene pretty well.
All right. Next slide, please. All right, we have some various Miocene critters. So Proconsul is indeed an early ape. It is in fact a stem hominoid. So it nests outside of the gibbons, and so outside the superfamily, which includes the gibbons and the great apes, because somebody said gibbons are lesser apes, but I think they're the best apes. Fight me.
Well, in this case, lesser versus greater is referring to size.
No, they're the best. They're the greatest. Make apes great again. Make gibbons great again.
Okay. Also, you have something labeled as an elephant that clearly isn't.
Ooh. Amebelodon is a proboscidean, which has this very strange shovel tusk on its bottom jaw. Those are its lower incisors, which it is using probably to dig like for roots and things like that. And then Thalassocnus, which were aquatic sloths, which is certainly an interesting thing to think about, which were, also possibly preyed upon by the sperm whale relative Acrophyseter. So the Miocene was a strange time with its aquatic sloths and weird shovel elephant relatives and things like that.
And one thing I want to point out is that something we talked about a while back was the concept of chronospecies. And Thalassocnus is actually a genus that contains 3 chronospecies that probably don't represent separate lineages, but rather the same lineage at different points in time. And as you go from older to younger, you see increasing adaptations to an aquatic lifestyle within the organisms. So it's just a fun little thing that you can trace out. You can trace this sort of very early stages where they're really not very well adapted to living underwater, the Thalassocnus sloths. And then by the time you get to the final species, they're quite a bit better adapted. But then again, they didn't manage to make it. So how well adapted could they really be?
That is pretty cool. I did not know that.
Yeah. It's actually one of my go-to examples for chronospecies is the 3 species complex of Thalassocnus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Next slide, please.
That's why you have me.
Indeed, that is a fact. The Messinian salinity crisis. So as we said, this was from 5.96 to 5.33 million years ago. So the tail end of the Miocene. And in this event, the Strait of Gibraltar, which is between North Africa and Spain, and there was some tectonic uplift which caused it to close, and it dried out. That's why there are today these very large deposits of evaporites, which is what happens when you have salt water evaporating. It leaves the salt behind other minerals because they're
the non-volatiles, if you will.
Yep. And so as a result, you have all this land which is now exposed. And so various animals like elephants and hippos and rabbits and hedgehogs and all sorts of things can all run around in this area. And then it happened that again, due to tectonic movement, the strait opened up again, and this caused water to flow back in to the proto-Mediterranean. And as a result, the different organisms who had made lives in some of the sort of, I guess, what were then mountains were now islands, and they were separated from the mainlands. And as a result, organisms which were smaller ended up getting very large, as we talked about.
Island gigantism.
Indeed, is island gigantism, which happened for Neuralagus, which is a rabbit from Minorca, and then Dino Galler. Would that be Dino Gallery? Would that be the correct?
Is it from French?
It was found in Italy, but
I'm going to go ahead and guess it's probably Latin, so it's going to be Dino Gallerix.
Dino Gallerix, okay. Because I know they have like their little hero in or isn't it? Anyway, so hedgehog relative from Italy, and then you also have tiny elephants, which are on these islands, things that were shorter than humans. There were like giant swans, there were small hippos, all sorts of cool little guys turning up on these different islands. And of course, the rabbits like which is Neuralagus rex, by the way, got large because
you can repeat species names.
Yes, yeah, it got large because there were no predators on its island, and then like goats were introduced later, and apparently it was outcompeted by goats. So,
Rip.
Yep, big sad.
Well, people gotta have their wool and their milk and their cheese and their meat.
I suppose.
Plus, you can't get really good nutrition from rabbits, so
is the way it is, I guess.
There's actually a thing called rabbit starvation, which occurs in humans who take in too high of a portion of their protein in rabbit meat, which is actually lacking in certain micronutrients that humans need. So if you get too much of your nutrients from rabbits, you'll actually end up being malnourished despite eating more than enough calories.
Very interesting.
Wow.
Did not know that.
Vary your diet, guys. Don't
Indeed.
just eat rabbit.
Indeed. You heard it here first, folks.
Toss a cat in there every once in a while.
Or second. Oof. Next slide, please. Artiodactyls, woo!
Yay!
Our even hoof friends.
Are we going to hear pretend that, Camelopardalis is a real animal and not just made up? Because that seems really way more made up than just a horse with a horn.
Is that? What is
It's
that?
just my stance. It's just a fact that like the giraffe seems like a much crazier animal than the unicorn, and yet the giraffe is the one that's real.
I guess. I mean, maybe.
I mean, it's a giant leopard, long neck, deer, cow monster. It's crazy.
It's like the line from Miracle Workers. Tell mom and dad what a giraffe is. It's a tall dog with a leg for a neck. What a good show. I only saw the first season, but I liked it. I know they made more seasons. Didn't watch them. Sorry.
Boo.
So those guys on the left, those are the oh gosh, what is that family called? It's got like Synthetoceras, and Cryptoceras and all these other guys who have these weird horn arrangements on their heads. They really went all out with the different horn arrangements.
I can't remember the name, but I'm going to go with Neodinocephalians is my new name for them.
I like it. I approve.
If you guys don't know what dinocephalians are, go look at the one where we covered the Permian.
Yes, absolutely. And then on your right, those are giraffids.
No antilocaprids, though.
No, because antilocaprids aren't real. Sorry, guys.
Yes, they're either cervids or they're bovids. There is no middle ground.
The interesting. So I found this chart when I did a video on the evolution of giraffes way back. Because there's a favorite talking point in creationist circles that is giraffes can't evolve because their brains would explode unless they evolved all these features all at once, like all the blood vessels which prevent their, all the blood from like running to their head and killing them and all this other stuff. And like, nope. Actually, in the fossil record, we can see how they had short necks at first, and then got like progressively longer necks. That's a thing. We have pretty much the whole fossil record for it. So,
well, and another interesting thing is that you'll get creationist organizations simultaneously displaying a okapi-looking organism as their common ancestor of the giraffe, quote-unquote, kind. And then, so out of one side, they're about arguing for rapid evolution, but then also saying, oh, the giraffe is an example of like irreducible complexity that couldn't possibly have evolved, even though according to your other publications, you think it did.
Yep.
Which is a little odd. Plus, it displays this tendency among creationists to think that features evolve in isolation and in sequence. So, like, first the giraffe evolves a long neck. Then it suddenly realizes that it has a problem with blood pressure when it lowers its head to drink. So then it starts evolving check valves in its neck. And it's like, no, these are all things that evolve together. You don't have to. You hear the same things like, oh, which came first, the skeleton or the lungs? It's like, neither. They're all evolving together, buddy.
I think in that case it was the skeleton, wasn't it?
Well, it depends on exactly when lungs show up, because they show up pretty early in the evolution of Osteichthyes, because they're basically basal to all extant Osteichthyan groups. So actually, probably not. They probably evolved around the same time. Because remember, swim bladders are modified lungs.
Yes, but chondrichthyans are secondarily cartilaginous. They're descended from bony fish.
Nah, forget it. That's just what they want you to think.
Acanthodians were bony.
Maybe.
You may have heard it here first, folks. Who knows? Anyway, artiodactyls are cool. Everyone go out and get yourself an artiodactyl.
Or don't. They're usually pretty big and not the easiest things to take care of.
All right, fine. Only if you can find a small one. Everybody gets like a musk deer or something.
Yeah, musk deer. Yeah. They have fangs. It's cool. And they're not even very closely related to deer at all. They're actually more closely related to bovids.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why they're called deer, but they are.
You'd have to be a coward to admit that they exist.
Yes. Get a chevrotain. Those guys are adorable.
They are pretty cute.
So yeah, I guess there are some acceptably small artiodactyls. But don't get like a blue whale. That's too big of an artiodactyl.
Don't get a what?
A blue whale. It's too big of an artiodactyl.
Yeah, that would... I don't know where you'd put that. You have to come up with a pretty darn big tank.
Well, if you get humpback whales, you can put two of them inside of a bird of prey.
If you what?
If you have humpback whales, you can put two of them inside the cargo hold of a bird of prey.
Oh, that's a ship?
Yeah, Star Trek reference. Star Trek 4.
Oh, okay.
It's a major plot point that they had to find some humpback whales to take back to the future. So they steal Doc Brown's spaceship to bring whales back to the future.
That sounds about right. I could believe that.
Yeah.
Because the dolphins said so long and thanks for all the fish.
Right, but then humans just hunted the humpback whales to extinction, which pissed off the aliens that were talking to them.
I'd be pretty upset too if we killed off such a magnificent animal.
Yeah, and you aren't even an alien race with a doomsday probe.
Yep.
Fortunately, in the real world, humpback whale numbers are on the rise.
Well, good. Glad to hear.
No thanks to Japan. They're the only country that still engages in commercial whaling.
Yikes.
Yeah, but they did sign the treaty that says it's illegal to do commercial whaling, so they do quote-unquote research, which basically means that like they go commercially kill whales, but they'll like measure organ weight or some crap.
Big yikes.
Yep, you can still go buy whale steaks in supermarkets in Japan. I've seen it.
Anyways, next slide, please. Movie night for Jackson. What movie am I watching?
Star Trek 4.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Xenarthra, our weird sometimes armored boys from South America. So I think we've talked about them before, but in case we haven't, Xenarthra is the clade that includes anteaters, sloths, or as David Attenborough says, sloths, and armadillos.
Yep.
And
also one of the only uniquely South American clades that's doing very well. It's like them and possums, and that's it.
Yeah. So the Xenarthra is a super order, and it is sister to Aphrotheria, interestingly. So both of the southern origin super orders are sister to each other, and the northern super orders are sister to each other. So interesting little biogeographic pattern. So these guys, so you have they're also kind of interesting because like sloths are one of the only mammals that have like a different set of was it cervical vertebrae?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. They have like everybody else has
7.
Yeah. And I think manatees are the other one.
I'm not positive, but it seems like it's almost hard coded into being a mammal that you get 7 cervical vertebrae. But there's very few exceptions, and yeah, sloths I believe are one of them. I'm not sure about manatees though. But it is interesting that they're both, in the same group, which is the Aphrotheres plus Xenarthrans.
True.
Maybe there's something there.
Maybe. I mean, they are pretty distantly related to each other.
Not as distantly related as I am to a blue jay, so People
I
still
suppose
see me eating chickens as cannibalism. Like I don't know where the lines are anymore.
Maybe all lines are arbitrary. Get right.
It's like yeah, sure. The divergence time between me and birds is like 180 million years, but I guess it's still cannibalism to eat a chicken. Just like it's cannibalism for you to eat a kangaroo, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think I would eat a kangaroo, but
I would.
Haplops is a slow.
Kangaroos are dumb and they're dicks. Eat them. I'm not kidding. They're very stupid and they're not very nice.
So you'd be just fine saying eat a bag of kangaroos?
Yeah.
You know what? Someone should use that on one of your videos now. AIG is a bag of kangaroos.
You guys now have my permission to do that. Also, speaking of dicks, kangaroos have 2 tips on theirs.
True. And what is it?
The echidna has 4. Take that, kangaroos.
Yeah. But it's only like the left ones work because the female's right ovary doesn't work, or ovaries don't work, whatever.
Look, reproduction is weird in a lot of animals.
Reproduction is very weird. Can confirm.
Although I still do remember Ian Juby thinking that only specific sizes of intermittent organs could enter the reproductive tract of any given female, and that they had to fit like the exact same size. And I'm like, dude, you belong to a species that has variable size and intermittent organs, and that's not exactly a common cause of infertility in couples, buddy. So it was very weird. Sorry, I don't know why I brought that up.
I appreciate it.
Experience.
I appreciate it. So yeah, Xenarthra was one of the groups hanging out with like the noto ungulates and the marsupials down in South America. So South America developed a lot of like strange critters, all off by itself, or maybe we're the strange ones.
It was like Australia for a while in that it doesn't have any major land conditions to anything else for a long time. So different groups of organisms evolved to fill the same niches, and so there were like gross morphological similarities that evolved convergently, but underlying they're from very different groups of animals. So you get what to the rest of the world seems very strange, because you have to remember that Eurasia and North America had faunal interchange during like ice ages, and they were connected for a little while, and like actually just physically touching, not just like the oceans were lower. So yeah, South America and Australia were very isolated for a very long time, geologically speaking, in the
Exactly. All right. Next slide, please.
Can I just point out the human in this slide first? Because, I mean, if you take pride in your work and you strike a pose, even though you're just there to indicate how large an animal is, that you should get some recognition. That's taking pride in your work.
I agree.
See?
What a great silhouette that person has,
Yes.
or is the best
Yeah, I
silhouette.
think is the more likely.
Meridia ungulata. So speaking of our other South American friends, so Meridia ungulata includes the Noto ungulates and their kin, basically, because not all of them were Noto ungulates. Like the Macrocenia, which is a Leptoptern. Fun fact: there was an Argentinian paleontologist the guy who discovered the Leptopterns, who thought, and also a lot of Noto ungulates, thought that the rest of the animals, the rest of the mammals in the world actually all originated in South America, not that they were convergent. And he was like a hero in Argentina back in the 1800s, and it turned out nope, these are just convergent. They are not the ancestors.
It's the same thing as like everyone in Europe looking for the earliest humans in their particular country. It's like, oh yeah, humans had to have evolved in Germany. No, it was France. No, it was England. Guys, it was totally Spain. It's like, or maybe it was East Africa.
Well, I like that Darwin was on that train before everybody else was.
Yeah, he was a smart man.
Darwin was like, nah, you guys are wrong. It's not in Asia. It's in Africa. Well, and also not Europe. So,
although there were still Chinese anthropologists still trying to go for the whole like Chinese people evolved from China Homo erectus into the well into the 20th century, and then finally the genomes came back and they were like, nah, I guess we're from Africa too. Aww.
Yeah, some strange holdouts here and there.
Yeah. I mean, it was just Chinese nationalism, right?
That's true.
They wanted to be special.
Hey, don't we all? I mean, fair enough.
I mean, I'm a late surviving Ceratosaurus. I feel like I'm special enough as is.
I think you're pretty special.
Thank you.
So here we have a couple guys which are kind of similar to mammals on other continents. So Rhinochippus was, guess from its name, it was kind of like a horse. So it was sort of convergently like a horse. Sort of grazing.
Some Noto ungulates got so much convergently like horses that they evolved to have only one hoof.
That's true. Archaeohyrax again was like a hyrax, although some like the early perissodactyls also had teeth kind of like hyraxes. So apparently, being like a hyrax was all the rage.
Yeah, they're kind of like hyraxes until you look at like the number of floating ribs on the hyrax and its weird, crazy pelvis, and you're like, oh, okay, no, I can't really mix these up once I have the whole skeleton.
Right.
Because hyraxes have something crazy like 11 pairs of floating ribs or nonsense like that. It's ridiculous.
That is very weird.
I'm exaggerating, but it's a lot. It's very weird.
Pachyrucus was like a rabbit. And then Pyrotherium, kind of this weird taper-like guy. Hanging out, vibing, doing taper-like things. Very strange. We actually got, or the researchers got like some proteomic data off of some Meridia ungulates in the past couple years and have pinpointed them as being stem perissodactyls, interestingly enough.
Which was not expected.
Right.
Most work that I saw before that had them nesting outside of ungulata, but it turns out, nope, they're actual ungulates.
Yeah. So ungulates evolved independently into like rabbit-like things and hyrax-like things and all that sort of stuff.
Horse-like things and rhino-like things.
Yeah. Exactly. So
those niches are still available. Someone's going to fill them.
That's true.
If a niche is available, it's going to be filled eventually.
That's true. Yeah. Anything you would like to add to this slide?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. Although actually, that Pachyrucos kind of looks like a Wayne Barlow illustration, and I kind of like that.
Well, I aim to please.
Thanks.
Next slide, please. Still in South America, so some marsupials like Thylacospilus, Cladosictus, and Boreana. So yeah, marsupials. Some marsupials in South America got scary. I would not want to go up against Thylacospilus because it was
What is it with mammals and mammal relatives and saber teeth? They keep doing it.
Right. Yeah, because Thylacospilus independently invented saber teeth. So
2 different form groups independently invented saber teeth. organopsids invented saber teeth way back in the Permian. It just keeps happening with synapsids.
Yeah. They really like being able to crush the throats of their enemies and prey, I guess.
I mean, it's a good strategy, I'll be honest.
Yeah. So, some of the marsupials left South America, crossed Antarctica before it was cold into Australia, and many others remained in South America and diversified into a variety where there are still marsupials today.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few continents which still has marsupials.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, North and South America and Australia all have marsupials. It's actually Africa and Eurasia that are in the minority there.
Yep.
Although I guess
it's
if
the
you
same.
put in Antarctica, it has placentals and no marsupials, so
They barely went out. The non marsupial continents barely went out. So
barely, yeah. But then again, in places where placental mammals are introduced, they do tend to disrupt the local marsupial population significantly. Like, it's probably not a coincidence that dingoes have taken over most of the niches that were occupied by large marsupial predators in Australia, and that basically the only marsupial to do well outside of South America in the Americas is like the Virginia opossum. That's it. And it's only doing as well as it is because humans introduce it as a game animal across the rest of the continent where it hadn't been before.
Right.
Because fun fact, if you see an opossum on the West Coast, humans brought it there so they could eat it.
Oh.
Not that individual, but like that population.
Right. Oh boy.
Yeah.
How fun.
Well, they're easy game, so.
I guess.
They're dumb and slow, and their defense mechanism is to lay still. That's a really easy animal to catch and kill.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Also, the what is it? The hognose snake does that. Like flips over. Is like, I'm dead.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry, can't eat me because I'm dead.
But if you're a human, you're like, well, that's what I was going to do anyway. So here we go.
Right. Or possibly a ceratosaur.
Brainbug says that she doesn't think I can take Glyptodont 1v1. Yeah, probably not.
I mean, it's basically a tank.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. I'll go eat an opossum.
All right. Next slide, please. And then we got some Australian marsupials.
Oh,
So guys on the other side, like Neohelos, which I believe is a diprotodontid. It's in that group.
Isn't that the with the wombat?
Yes, I believe it's with all those guys. Thylacoleo, the so-called marsupial lion, which is another carnivore. And then Palerchestes, this guy who has this weird sort of taper-like snout, hanging out in Australia. So just a little smattering of marsupials. Anything you want to add?
Are we going to get to Megalania in this slideshow?
I don't remember.
All right. Well, in case you don't, Megalania was also around in Australia, and it's like a Komodo dragon times 4.
It's very big, yes.
Yes. It's basically the largest lizard to not be a mosasaur that we know about.
Yeah. Big boy.
Yes.
Next slide, please. The Pliocene. So 5.3 to 2.58 million years ago, Arctic ice sheets become permanent, and then the Great American Biotic Interchange occurred. Yeah, I think that was somewhere around 3 million years ago. So between 3 and 5 million years ago, kind of wobbles a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, which makes sense, there were archipelagos between North and South America before the actual
Isthmus.
before the actual isthmus formed, which kind of makes sense. So, but then you really get your exchange of mammals and birds and plants and things between 3 and 5 million years ago.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, this picture is not from Africa. It might
This
look
picture
like it.
is South America.
Yep. So
because there's a a Latoptern down in the bottom left, and then a Xenarthran in the bottom right.
Well, Glyptodon. Okay. So one of the things that I think it's interesting to remember is that the Americas looked a whole lot more like modern Africa throughout most of like the Pliocene and the Miocene than they do today. There were giraffids. I mean, there's still giraffoids, I guess, in North America, but there were there were equids, giraffids, camelids, proboscideans of various kinds, all in North and South America doing stuff. And then North America lost a whole lot of that diversity. Just gone.
Yep. Facts.
There were even lions in North America.
There were.
Not just things we're calling lions, like actual lions.
We had... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like it's debated whether it's Panthera atrox or Panthera leo atrox. Like, it's that close. Like, if it's a separate species, it's the sister species to Panthera leo, which is the African lion.
Exactly. Yeah, that elephant is probably a Cuvier erroneus, which was a Gomphothere. So, like, elephants went from Africa to Asia, then a bunch made it into North America, and then like 2 genera made it into South America, I think. And Cuvier erroneus was one of them. So yeah, cool stuff. Next slide, please. And some Pliocene fauna: Dinofelis, Euclidoceras, Stegodon, and Pliohippus. So Dinofelis is, correct me, Dapper, is that actually, that's not in Felidae, right?
No, that is in. I always get it wrong. It's
like the sister group, right?
Nimravidae.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Or is it Nimvaridae?
I know. I think it's Nimravidae. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always get the name of that group wrong because like the letters just don't stick in my brain.
But it's like the sister group to Felidae, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So the not quite.
Basically, to tell them apart, you have to look at like the details of the inner ear. They're sometimes called the false cats,
right? Because
not only do they have very close ancestry with true cats, but also they filled a lot of the same niches that cats fill today. So they convergently evolved body plans that were a lot like modern felids. So like it's you basically have, I can't tell the difference. You have to basically be an expert to reliably distinguish these two groups.
It's almost like two clades, which are very closely related to each other, are very similar in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird how that is.
It's crazy. It's almost like that's a prediction of evolution or something. So, Euclidoceras, which is an artiodactyl, a cervid, clearly an example of orthogenesis. His antlers just grew too big and they died. That's what happened.
Yeah, that's not what happened.
Nope, that's not what happened, folks. Actually, fun fact, Stephen Jay Gould was the one who went out. That wasn't with Euclidoceras, it was with Megaceras, another cervid. He went around comparing antler sizes to skull sizes and found that they increase proportionally, which is what you expect if the antlers are growing with the rest of the body instead of growing like super disproportionately. So, Stegodon was a Southeast Asian elephant, and then Pliohippus was a horse. It's a well-known horse and equid from this time period. It's one of the equids that shows up on the Hyracotherium to modern horse charts, because it's pretty similar to modern horses. He has like the single hoof and pretty similar dentition, all that sort of stuff. So yeah. Dinofelis was also probably hunting our ancestors in Africa, fun fact.
Well, your ancestors.
Right. Sorry. My ancestors. Dapper's ancestors they would have put this guy in the ground.
It's true. Well, some of them were also much, much smaller.
That's true.
That, like Euparcaria stage of Archosaur evolution, and yeah, Dinofelis would would definitely not feel threatened by Euparkeria.
Stegodon is also an animal that will get a notable mention in the orangutan's tale
Nice.
for niche partitioning. So yeah, that'll be cool. You guys will get to hear all about that. Anything you'd like to add?
Nah, I talked about false cats enough.
There you go. Next slide, please. Aha, here we go. The Great American Biotic Interchange. So around, like I said, 5 to 3 million years ago, the Isthmus of Panama formed, joining Central and South America. This allowed the fauna of North and South America to exchange. Primates and rodents had rafted earlier, as well as a couple other groups I didn't mention here. Like there were some lizard groups that probably rafted also. One genus of notoungulates, which is Mixotoxodon, some xenarthrans, marsupials, from South America migrated to North America, while elephants, perissodactyls, artiodactyls, and carnivores migrated into South America. So as we've said before, this event was very one-sided.
Yes, it went much better for the North American animals than it did for the South American animals, with very few exceptions. So common South American animals that still persist to this day are basic in North America are basically procyonids, who actually still ended up in South America from North America, but then evolved as a family in South America, then to reinvade North America. So they only kind of count. And that includes like the raccoon, which is the only common procyanid in North America. But in the southern parts, you also get things like coatimundis and other procyonids. The 9-banded armadillo is doing great, and its range is expanding every single year into parts of the United States where it never existed before. And eventually it'll probably hit southern Canada. Like, I would not be surprised if like Ontario gets 9-banded armadillos eventually. The other group is, like I said, the opossums, although they've also in very recent years had artificial help from humans. But on the other hand, I mean, bears, canines, felids, tapirs, camelids, all doing great down in South America.
Horses actually moved into South America, went extinct, and then were reintroduced in South America.
Yep, around the same time they were reintroduced to North America.
Equus, was it Simplicitans, I think? Darwin actually found the tooth of an extinct horse while he was doing fossil hunting in South America, and that was he considered it one of his best finds, because he was like, whoa, nobody knew horses used to be here before the Columbian exchange. So he thought that was pretty cool, and the rest of the scientific community thought that was pretty cool. So yeah. All right, next slide, please. So a couple examples. That's Mixotoxodon, the guy who went northward, up in the top right. Macrokenia, a left top turn. So that may not actually be a correct reconstruction anymore. It may have been he may not have had the big like trunk. It may have just been a large like nasal region on top of the head.
This is the Walking with Beast reconstruction, isn't it? Yes,
it is. But just so you guys know, in case anybody calls me out for it in the side chat, I know. And then Toxodon, also I think that was also a fossil that Darwin brought back from South America. And then it was described by Richard Owen once he got back. So it was one of the fossils that Darwin actually thought it was related to rodents. The teeth, which he called them like gnawers. The teeth seem most similar to rodents. So Owen put them in that group. So, which they are nowhere near anymore.
No, they're not. I mean, they're still Boreoeutherians, I guess, but that's about as close as it gets.
Yeah.
Which, in case you guys aren't aware, Boreoeutheria includes a lot of mammals. It's one of the largest groups of placental mammals.
It way far and ahead in terms of species beats like all the other clades of mammals.
Yeah.
Because it has bats and rodents in it, so yeah, it's way beats everybody else.
If you're a mammal, if you name a random mammal species, what is it, like a 3/4 chance of being a Boreoeutherian or something?
Yeah, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I wouldn't be surprised. So, yeah. Yep, that's most mammals. In fact, all the mammals you see on this slide are Boreoeutherians.
Pretty much all the mammals we've seen, except for the proboscideans today and the marsupials.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. And Xenarth. Well, we've seen a couple Xenarthrans, but yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay, that's true. Yeah, we did see some Xenarthrans.
It's just a handful. We've seen a handful of the other groups.
Yeah. That's all there is, really.
Yeah, true. All right. Next slide, please. The Pleistocene. So 2.58 million to 11,000 years ago, which just so arbitrary, but whatever. Anyways.
Look, we ended with the last glacial maximum, right? With the last glacial maximum retreats, and the sort of human history sort of climate starts to begin.
No, I thought the last glacial maximum ended after that.
Did it?
I thought it was.
All right, now we have to check.
Well, maybe it did. You might be right. But at any rate, ocean circulation was changed as a result of both the formation of the Isthmus of Panama and the separation of Antarctica.
Okay, so
warm water.
10,000 years ago, but I mean, what's 1,000 years between friends?
We'll see, because I think 11,000 years ago was like when the agricultural revolution was starting, wasn't it?
Now I have to Google that. Okay.
I thought that's what it was like based on. It was like when the agricultural revolution started.
No, that was even later. That was between 7,000 and 10,000 years ago.
Okay. Well, then what was 11,000 years ago? Why did it end?
Because the mammoths were mostly gone, except for Wrangel Island.
That makes it even more arbitrary, Dapper.
Look, all of these are fundamentally going to be arbitrary.
I mean, I guess that's true.
On them anywhere else. Like, sure, sometimes we're like, oh, mass extinction, we'll put a line there. But, like, it's an arbitrary point to even use mass extinctions in the first place.
Fair enough. Warm water would have to travel a lot farther before returning to equatorial regions, thereby becoming cooler. The combination of cooling oceans and cyclically changing climates induced 11 glacial events. So, ooh, cold times, boys.
I hated it. It was the worst.
That picture, I believe, is North America. Although it could also reasonably be South America.
Yeah, that looks like Smilodon, so that's going to be North America, I believe, because that was primarily where Smilodon lived, was in North America.
Yeah, I think you're right. Next slide, please. Here you go, Dapper.
We did get Megalania.
Boom.
Yay!
And Ninjamies. Ooh, I was on fire.
Nice. Yeah, you picked some of those, like the great Pleistocene fauna of Australia reptiles.
Then Miracynotics was the so-called
American cheetah.
Yeah, the American cheetah, which was a cougar. Well,
okay, but to be fair, cougars and modern cheetahs are sister groups. Like they're closely related to each other.
Yes, but Miracynotics also independently adapted to look like a cheetah, to look more like a cheetah, I should say.
It had that same sort of niche of like the rapid short-range pursuit hunter.
This was the thing that hunted pronghorns, and now they're gone.
Yep, which leaves pronghorns with absurd jumping and speed.
Yes, yeah. Nobody else comes anywhere close.
Yeah, it was like an arms race between Miracynotics and pronghorn, and that they're both keep just dumping all their points into dexterity. And then suddenly Miracynotics is gone, and the pronghorn's left here with like, well, we got like a 25 in dexterity. I don't know what to do with it.
Right. And then Coelodonta, the woolly rhino.
Yay, woolly rhino.
Yeah. Woolly rhino for the win. Anything you'd like to add on this section?
Ninjamis is not technically a turtle. It's actually a stem turtle. But the thing is that the way that we define stem and crown groups is crown groups are extant members of a group. So what that means is if basically people who were writing down biology stuff had gotten to Australia like actually not that much earlier than they did, Ninjamis would just be a different kind of turtle because we would have defined crown turtles differently. And I like to point that out because it kind of shows the sort of arbitrariness of the way that humans define groups. Because fundamentally, we define them in ways that are useful to us, but nature doesn't really care about what humans are doing. And so it's just fun to think about the fact that not that long ago, geologically speaking, if humans had just been writing down biology stuff earlier, the Ingemis would just be a turtle. And there'd be 3 groups of turtles. There'd be the cryptideers, the pleurodeers, and the Shelly Horn boys.
The Shelly Horn boys. Please make it so.
Yeah.
We have to go back in time and rescue him now.
Right, so we can bring him forward. It's like, now he's a crown turtle. What are you going to do about that?
He is Shelly Horn Boy 29. There you go. All right, next slide, please. Aha! The actual elephant, the very first elephants we're seeing in this.
The first one where I have to complain, hey, Jackson, that's not really an elephant.
I can't actually remember where Stegodon falls. If it falls within Elephantidae, I do not remember.
I think it actually falls just outside, but I might be wrong about that.
It may fall just outside. I don't remember.
As evidence of this, I'm going to point out the cladogram of Elephantidae, and it does not include Stegodon.
Well, this is all based on gene sequences. Because we have gene sequences now, folks, for mastodons, Paleoloxodon, and a bunch of different mammoths, which is really cool. And it turns out that so researchers have basically already sort of figured out this kind of phylogeny from like the shape of oh god, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the bone.
I just hate that Paleoloxodon makes Loxodonta paraphyletic by just existing with that name.
Yep.
Like, it's time to give like Loxodon cyclotis its own genus just to fix that problem.
Well, either Loxodon cyclotis is like the only Loxodon or Loxodonta, or L. africana is, or sorry, Paleoloxodon is also Loxodonta. Either way, who knows?
No, because Loxodonta africana was described first, so it actually gets priority on the name Loxodonta.
Oh, so it would be, so then cyclotis would have to be changed or change Paleoloxodon. Either way,
to Loxodonta,
yeah. Personally, I'm here for changing Loxodonta cyclotis to a new genus, but at this point, I don't know if they're going to do it because this problem has been known for several years now, and elephant researchers are like, no, I refuse.
They don't care. It's Loxodonta. It's been look. If it was good enough for my grandfather, it's good enough for me. It's Loxodonta.
That's basically where they're at.
I mean, really, it is.
Hyoid, the hyoid bone. There you go. The shape of the hyoid bone had already sort of indicated this phylogeny, and then it was just reconfirmed with genetics, which is kind of cool.
That is really cool.
So yeah. Yay for nested hierarchies that are like independently confirmed by multiple data methods.
We call that a twin nested hierarchy.
Yeah. It's almost like you can use the same data or multiple roots of multiple lines of data to reach the same conclusion in science. Crazy how that works.
I think we call that independent confirmation of a particular hypothesis.
Is that what we call that?
It is what we call that. Yeah, when
wild.
Not necessarily related data sets both confirm the same hypothesis, we call that independent confirmation.
Whack. I wonder if there are like any other hypotheses concerning biodiversity that can also like meet that standard.
Yeah, it turns out there's a lot.
Oh, you cut out there. Say again?
Oh, I said it turns out there's a lot.
There's a lot of other like hypotheses regarding biodiversity that meet that criterion.
Yeah, like common ancestry for all sorts of other groups separately.
Oh, I meant like evolution as I meant like common ancestry.
Well, evolution
like,
has long since ceased to be a hypothesis at this point.
You're right.
When I said a hypothesis, I meant this particular tree.
I should have rephrased that. It was my fault. I should have said ideas about biodiversity.
Ooh. There's new American cheetah research. I'm going to open that in a new tab and look at that later.
Ooh, nice. All right. Unless there's anything else Dapper wants to add on this slide.
My favorite extant elephant is Loxodonta africana. That's all I got.
Very cool. Can confirm everybody should read Elephants by Hannah Mumby. Very good book on elephants.
Yeah. They
Next
are
slide.
also the most dangerous extant elephantids, but
They just need a hug. That's all they need.
no, they really don't.
Just
They
we do not
really don't need a hug.
we do not on Jackson Wheat Incorporated suggest that you run up to African elephants and give them hugs.
Yeah, that is not advice, especially bull elephants.
My lawyer is waving his arms at me right now. All right, next slide, please. Some more later Australian marsupials. So Procoptodon, which I believe walked. It wasn't quite to hopping yet, but it was also a very large kangaroo.
And very
Very
derpy.
Very derpy. Look at that face. Good lord. Then Zygomaturus and Diprotodon, both diprotodontids, so both related to like koalas and all those guys. Diprotodon, also fun fact, apparently the only marsupial that seasonally migrated.
Interesting.
So that is very wild. I think that research came out just like a year, like 2 years ago, maybe something like that. It was pretty recent. But anyway, anything you'd like to add on these derpy Australian marsupials?
So one thing about kangaroo feet, I've had someone legitimately ask me whether a kangaroo foot belonged to a dinosaur or not. And it was a very strange question for me because, like, I recognize that most people probably don't have the ability to easily recognize all the different, like, animal anatomies just from a quick glance. But, like, to me, I'm like, I can't imagine how you would think this is a dinosaur. But no, it's not a dinosaur.
Wait,
kangaroo.
Hold on. They showed you what, like, the bones?
Yeah, the bone, the skeletal anatomy of a kangaroo foot. And they were like, "Is this a dinosaur?" I was just like, "No,
Oh,
no, it is not.
that's
That is very much a mammal."
very interesting.
Yeah.
Very strange. Fun fact.
Although, given that we have one-fingered dinosaurs, I am holding out for the one-toed dinosaur eventually.
Which, if you guys haven't watched it, everybody needs to watch Prehistoric Planet. Get on it.
No spoilers,
now.
Jackson. I still haven't seen it.
I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying everybody needs to watch it. It's a great thing. It's great. Highly recommend. Next slide, please. Aha! My apey boys.
No, clearly, Jackson, this is just a collection of very obvious apes and then some other very obvious humans with no transitional forms in between.
That's true. I can't believe I was ever so foolish as to think otherwise.
Humans clearly start at J.
Is it? I can't even. Well, see, I is Homo Georgicus. H. Oh, F is actually the first Homo on here. So, anyway,
It's just
this
fun for me
slide-
because the people who like to say that never actually manage to agree on which ones go in which group, which
that's true.
just shows the lie that there's such obvious groups in the first place.
That's true. The people who say, "Oh, a 5-year-old can tell the difference," can't actually agree amongst themselves when they are full-grown adults as to
They
which
can't
is which.
even, in all cases, agree with their own selves as individuals.
Yep. Oh,
You
that's
get the
yeah.
same author publishing different assessments of different hominins depending on which book they're writing.
So, fun fact for anyone who's not aware of that reference, that was Dwayne Gish,
Yeah.
who in 2 separate instances identified not 2 different fossils, the same fossil skull cap of a Homo erectus as both 100% ape and then years later 100% human.
Well, at least he was right about 100% ape.
I mean, I guess technically, depending on how you define human, he was also right about that one.
Yeah.
I mean, some people define human as just anatomically modern Homo sapien, and some people are like, if it's Homo, it's human. So,
I don't know too many people who go with anatomically modern. I know most people I've talked to who have restricted would include archaic Homo sapiens, but they're like, that's the species.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I'd just say like if it's Homo, it's human. I'd kind of fall into that camp.
I'm in the camp where, like, look, human is a common name. It doesn't have a rigorous definition.
Yeah.
So any place that you draw the line is some place that, even though I might not draw the line there, I don't have an argument because it's just a feeling thing.
We put our feels over reals here, is what we're saying.
No, that's definitely not what I do.
That's
This is
exactly
I
what we
try
do.
to do. Actually, I was
Always
having
put feels over reels, folks.
I was actually having a conversation about that, and I was like, yeah, if I put feels over reels, I would much rather be a young Earth creationist and then have like, some like really high assurance of things like, my ability to have some aspect of myself survive beyond death and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And, my place in the universe has some kind of cosmic significance. Like, all that's very attractive from an emotional standpoint. And it's not believing in it doesn't make those things not true.
Yeah.
But if young Earth creationism were true, those things would kind of have to be. So, like, yeah, if I could choose which universe to live in, it would be in the one where young Earth creationism is true. Sorry, guys.
I mean, right. I mean, I don't know. I think about like living eternally is horrifying. Like, I'm not even sure I want to be here right now.
Well, look, maybe I can opt out eventually.
I guess maybe, because like you get bored of doing everything eventually, right?
Yeah, although also like most more sophisticated depictions of afterlife include it being radically different enough from current existence as to make judgments about how much you would like it based on modern existence probably not be really very reliable. So,
I guess. Also, shout out to Gutsick Gibbon because she made this picture herself.
Nice. Wait,
and it
really?
looks very nice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
You see down there at the very bottom, it says compiled by Erica Gutsick Gibbon.
Oh yeah, it does.
She also made it to where like their turned like profile, which is really cool.
Yeah.
The same skulls.
And she's going around having fun on sand dunes without us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I'm okay with that.
I'm not. I'm jealous.
I don't run up a lot of sand dunes.
Well, I mean, I don't either, but I would if, there were some around and there was a gibbon running around the sand dunes.
Don't you live like out in the desert?
Yeah, but it's not a sandy desert. It's a rocky desert.
That's lame. That's big lame.
I didn't make the desert.
Maybe you should have Dapper. Maybe it'd be better then, I guess.
Well, I don't really have access to my desert maker, so...
Oh, dear. Anyway. Ben Oven, no relation, said, my head feels like an M. I don't know what that means, but
it means
I
M on the
approve.
chart.
Oh. Oof. Big oof, old buddy. Big oof. I feel that. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, sort of the same thing. Just the whole skeleton is here now. So you have Australopithecus afarensis, Australopithecus sediba, which is... So Australopithecus is a grade, not a clade. Because
Correct.
Australopithecus sediba is actually more closely related to all Homo species than it is to any other Australopith species.
I mean, there have been some people who argued for calling it Homo sediba.
That is true. We've even talked to a guy who argued for that, although not from an evolutionary perspective, but from a creationist one. So
Right, which was weird.
yeah, it was a little strange.
Well, where's the Australopithecus?
Wasn't that something Nephilim Free said?
Yup. And he said it for like an hour straight and no one corrected him. He also said tibula.
Tibula, that was the other thing, yeah. Oof.
Yeah. Well, this is the guy who, when presented with the word carbohydrate, couldn't figure out what perhaps made up carbohydrates.
Honestly, at this point, I'd even forgotten that was a thing. I've tried to like purge my memories of interactions with him. So.
This is the guy who made a whole video about geocentrism and then eventually got so embarrassed he took it down. But that's not how the internet works.
This is also the guy who ate paper on camera.
Yep. And also the guy who let his favorite escort service website just be on his tabs that were open when he was screen capturing.
Which, I mean, we're not shaming here, but at least
I am, because he's the kind of person who would shame other people for using an escort service.
I mean, fair enough. We will shame
for that reason.
For hypocrisy.
It's like why I'm willing to shame Kent Hovind for almost certainly being in a gay relationship. I wouldn't shame most people for it, but for someone who's like, oh yeah, we should kill all the gays.
Right.
Yeah, I'm willing to name and shame Kent Hovind for his I'm extremely confident gay relationship with his tech guy, Steve.
Sure. Fair enough. Fair enough. You got me there. Not kink shaming, kink asking why. So a lot of things changed in the evolution of humans, and actually, if you guys want to know like in depth all about that, we're doing a series on my channel. I was going to say on this channel, but this video will also appear on Dapper's channel in the future.
Eventually.
It's happening on my channel, and it's called The Ancestor's Tale. It's based on the book of the same name by Richard Dawkins and Yan Wong, and we talk extensively about the evolution of humans. It spans like 8 episodes, I think, because there are no transitional fossils of humans or anything like that. Those don't exist. But you get a lot of things that change, like bipedalism or obligate bipedalism occurs. All the apes can do facultative bipedalism. You get a switch towards like increased carnivory. You get and also with bipedalism came like a suite of changes, like changes to our legs, our hips, pelvis, all that sort of stuff. Our pelvis became more bowl shaped, as opposed to like chimps, which have these higher pelvic bones. Sort of like flares out like upwards more, right?
Yes.
Our face became less prognathic over time, which may be a result of neoteny. That's up for debate, apparently.
I mean, juvenile apes do have flatter faces than adult apes. So, like,
well,
at the very least, it looks like neoteny.
It does. But I mean, the debate is more like, are the developmental processes that caused our face shifting, or those like shortening of those developmental processes? Was it a truncation of the processes that make our face prognathic? Maybe.
I'm going to go ahead and say confidently, yes. And no, I will not elaborate or take questions.
Fair enough. That's the correct way to do it. I don't know. There have been, from what I've read of the literature on it, there are points on both sides. We do certainly slow down like brain development, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to pass through the birth canal.
Fence sitter.
Well, I got called out on it once, and I was like, I don't want to be wrong, and I don't want to make this mistake again in the future if I am wrong, so I will look it up. And it turns out the answer is maybe. So that didn't help. So this is sort of the broad strokes of like human evolution. Like we became obligately bipedal, face became less prognathic. We developed a wider range of tools,
smaller
languages. Yep, smaller teeth. Language eventually became a thing. When exactly language became a thing, don't really know.
Yeah, that's the problem with that. Is look, languages don't fossilize until you invent writing, and that's a long way off.
Yep. So was Homo erectus capable of language? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
I actually think the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, could have been.
Although perhaps not as sophisticated as Homo sapiens.
Sure, fair enough. Right. But at any rate, that's where we are. Anything you'd like to add?
Humans are weird.
Humans are weird. Agreed.
That's all I got. They're just bizarre.
My least favorite species. No, okay, mosquitoes beat us out ever so slightly.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's horsehair worms, mosquitoes. Yeah, there are liver flukes. There's a lot of parasites.
But Dapper, those things only exist because Adam and Eve ate the apple of the tree.
Yes, and then apparently Noah's family were riddled with parasites.
Yes, Noah's family was only riddled with parasites because of Adam and Eve.
I mean, I guess technically that is the internal logic of the whole thing, yeah.
So there you go. All right, next slide, please. And so, the common ancestor of modern humans, Denisovans, Neanderthals, lived about 700,000 years ago or so, give or take 100,000 years. And as you can see, there was actually interchange amongst all of our species. Mm-hmm. So we, not Dapper because he's a ceratosaur, but we humans have genes, or remnants at least, from Denisovans and Neanderthals, and they also had remnants of each other and us. And so that's kind of cool. It also makes it harder to figure out like who's related to who when we all share bits of each other. As was in fact the case that it was thought, I believe it was thought Denisovans were closer to humans for a little bit, and then we got more genetic sequencing. It turned out no, they're more closely related to Neanderthals.
I was always skeptical of that claim, honestly.
Yeah. And then the potential unknown hominin. So this points to the Denisovans. So apparently people in the Melanesians have genes that they acquired horizontally from another human species, but we have no idea what it was. It happened. There was some.
It was probably the ancient aliens that came down to use early hominins as gold mining slaves.
Here's hoping. That'd be way cooler than like the couple of monkeys banging, So, anyway.
Call me Zachariah Sitchin. Give me a call. Pretty sure you're dead.
I remember one of my favorite Seth MacFarlane lines was like Cosmos only has 1 season while Duck Dynasty has 10. What does that tell you about the human species?
Look, we covered all we needed to know about the cosmos in that 1 season, but there's a whole lot to know about hunting for ducks with like over-the-top right-wing cliches.
That's true. Also, no, never mind. I'm not going to dox myself anymore than I need to.
I also heard that apparently they grew those beards like for the show. Like, before the show started, like none of them had those big crazy beards.
I believe that. I can see that. That's a thing. Like that would definitely be a marketing thing. Like it's easily recognizable.
And then at least one of them went on to go play himself in God's Not Dead.
Oh! What a colossally bad movie that was filmed at my school.
Oh, really? Ouch.
Yep, it was filmed at LSU in Baton Rouge.
Does Kevin Sorbo actually teach a philosophy course there?
No, I'm pretty sure if he said any of the things in like a philosophy class that he said in the movie, the students would just walk out.
Well, as well they should.
Yeah, because he was so dumb. Just so dumb. Like putting Richard Dawkins down as a philosopher? Come on.
Goodness.
Come on. This is like, it's like they said, where do we go to find the greatest minds in atheism? Oh, I know, Reddit.
I mean, look, there's a segment of atheists who I do think actually honestly think that Reddit is where you go to find the greatest minds.
No, yeah, absolutely. But like, then they made a movie out of it.
Right? Oh my goodness.
Oh God, I could go on for so long about all the stupid things in that movie, but so many people have done it. It's just beat to death.
That's not what we're here for. We're here for human evolution. Let's keep going.
Go watch Big Joel's review of it. Anyway, monkeys share genes. It's kind of cool. So we're part other monkey. Think about that. Mm-hmm. And some of us are part mystery monkey. Think about that. Anything you'd like to add?
Nah.
Next slide, please. Also, the Denisovans tale was one of the videos, so we cover that topic in depth. Oh yeah, transition from herbivory to I should have said to omnivory to predominant carnivory. I did not really finish that. So like, and even herbivory is like in quotes because the other apes aren't strict herbivores. Nothing is a strict herbivore really, but it like makes up the predominance of their diet, but they'll also eat things like termites and small monkeys and rats and whatever they can catch basically. Also,
look, humans went from being as herbivorous as like say like a chimpanzee to being having meat as a much more important part of the diet. Like you can feed a chimpanzee on like a frugivore diet and it'll be fine. They take meat when they can. They go on the occasional hunting party, but like they're not major predators in the ecosystem. Whereas humans often have become like top predators in environments, especially once they develop enough technology.
Right. Yeah, and also you can track that in our gut biota as you go through time. If you look at like different fecal samples through human history, we have gone more and more towards carnivorous diets.
Looking at fecal samples is my favorite pastime.
I mean, it is pretty interesting, especially for like owls. You see like the little voles and stuff. I remember doing that when I was in elementary school. It's kind of neat.
Those are usually vomited, though. Not.
Oh, you're right. They are. They're yeah. The owl
Oh,
pellets
yeah.
are
Yeah, those come up through the throat.
Yep. Big sad. But our gut biota. So we have a lot of the bacteria and the archaeans, which are in our gut, are most closely related to those to other species within the other apes. I know, big shock, right? But there is reduced diversity because it turns out if your diet is predominantly meat, you don't need as many microbes helping you process it. It's a lot easier to process meat than it is like cellulose, for instance. So, who would have thunk it? There were different tool industries like the Oldowan, the Schulian, and Mousterian, and these are based on like the tool types. So, like, how long do these tools persist? And it turns out there was actually sharing of tool industries between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. So that's also kind of cool. Traded back and forth. Use of fire.
Or do they kill each other and take their stuff?
That's also possible. Who knows? I'm gonna believe they were all friends and just helped each other out like buddies do.
Yeah, I've met a lot of humans, though, so I'm less confident.
Well, yeah, I guess there's that. Use of fire. So there was probably a transition from like our ancestors like seeing fire happen as a result of like, you know, drought and then lightning striking, and like carrying that fire to other places to eventually like kindling their own fire through use of or through like hitting rocks together to create sparks, things like that. And then, like we said earlier, the evolution of language. When did that happen? Who knows? But it's here now. Unfortunately, we all talk to each other.
At some point is when it happened.
Return to only having like predator shouts. Like, oh no!
As someone who's
lion.
interested in languages, I like languages overall.
Okay, we'll let you have it. We'll let you have this one.
Thanks.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's good. I think we covered it.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Yep, all modern languages have nouns, verbs, and predicates. The common structure of languages has been termed the universal grammar theory. There's likely an underlying genetic and neurological reason for this. Okay, I remember at the time I made this slide, I was reading about universal grammar theory and like Noam Chomsky and all that sort of stuff. And I briefly was reading about like the evolution of languages because I was writing, the Ergast tale. That's what it was. And so I was big into it. And then if you guys don't know, a lot of like linguistic stuff kind of also runs into philosophy. And philosophy is scary. So I got what I needed for that script and I stopped reading about linguistics.
Boo, linguistics is fun.
Yeah, I mean, like the history of how one language becomes a series of other languages is kind of cool.
It's like phylogeny.
It is like phylogeny. Some could even use it as a really cool metaphor for explaining nested hierarchies.
It's actually surprisingly close in terms of like how the processes work. The one big thing is like it's hard to actually establish like legitimate like selection differences because it's really hard to find reasons why one form of a language is actually better than another form in terms of communication. So that's really the only big difference there is it's like the selection criteria seem to be very hard to define in language evolution, whereas they tend to be much easier in biology.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was briefly looking up like universal grammar theory stuff, and we should definitely have Dapper on to like tell us all about that sometime because he knows about some of that stuff.
Yeah, universal grammar theory is fun stuff, and there are some things that do seem to be universal. However, most proposals for universal features in human languages have prominent counterexamples. So it's actually hard to compile a list of truly like unique or truly universal features in human languages is what I meant. Unique features is actually fairly easy.
That's why it's like, I mean, it is just like nouns, verbs, and predicates, right? Like that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, like every language has
because what was it? What else would we be talking about?
Separately, and the ability to make agent and patient distinctions in some way or another.
Right. I mean, because if not those three things, like what would we be talking about?
Yeah,
like, person goes. Well, goes
so
where?
I have seen proposals for hypothetically possible alternate linguistic systems that avoid certain word classes or avoid making the agent-patient distinction obligatory. So, like, it is at least hypothetically possible.
Okay.
But, like, they're all very highly speculative, and obviously we don't have any actual examples of natural human languages doing these things.
Right.
So there have been some proposals as to why these things don't have to be universal in, like, an a priori sense, but they're all very, very highly speculative, and it's not really clear that these are actually practical options for communication, even in, like, a non-human species that had some like high level of intelligence.
Ernie Matthews says language is fascinating. Talk about it all you want. So we will definitely have to have.
Yeah, we should do a language.
Come back. Yeah, and just have.
Or maybe Jackson will show up on my channel and we'll do a language there.
I mean, I don't have like really anything to contribute to that. It would be more of just a listening session.
Fair. Because that does seem like it would be more appropriate to me being a guest on your channel then.
Because some of the stuff I researched was like, what role did like hand signals, for instance, play in the evolution of language? And
good luck figuring that one out.
When did like babbling become a thing and all that sort of stuff, which is really cool because also it turns out bats and birds babble as babies, interestingly. And they also have their own little, I mean, obviously it's not like language to the extent that we have, but they have their communication systems that they use to like indicate where food is and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. Does that count as language?
I would say no. Generally speaking, my definition for language is that it has to be able to talk about situations that are not currently present in the environment of the speaker or listener.
Okay.
So, most animal communication systems have calls for something like, "There's a jaguar right here," or "Watch out, like, there's a hawk."
What about bees? Like bees will shake and like indicate how far away a certain flower is.
Yeah, bees might be an example where my definition does start to break down a little bit, which might mean that either I have to accept that that's a language. I might actually include the fact that it's a learned communication system.
Okay.
Because bees do not learn their communication system.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Fair enough. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add on this slide?
I can't really read it very well, so no. I'm going to go ahead and say
no. Yeah, my bad. It's probably easier to see like on bigger, but regardless. Oh yeah, speaking of Noam Chomsky, everybody should read Manufacturing Consent. It's a really good book. Haha. So
that was his like pro-anarchy book, wasn't it?
No, that was about the bias in the media regarding foreign policy.
Oh, okay.
So he talks about the various crises we caused in Central and South America, the Indochina Wars, the plot to kill the Pope, all that fun stuff, and how the American narrative kind of did not give the facts to be unduly polite.
What do you need a Pope for?
Well, the thing about the plot to kill the Pope was like this was a Russian-backed dude who at this point I can't even remember everything that was in it, but ultimately it was like they were trying to connect him back to Russia, and like this is a plot to shoot the Pope to help like spread communism or whatever. And it's like, no, he had nothing to do. The sniper had nothing to do with Russia or communism or anything like that. He was totally unconnected from that. But
You just
we
didn't like
kept,
the Pope.
and I can't remember
There's
what
been
the
a lot
reason.
of really crappy popes out there.
Yeah, that was. What was his name? What was that Pope at the time?
I don't know, but I do know that the best Pope is
Yep.
Theodore II, the current reigning Pope of Alexandria, and that guy is the only Pope that should get his own country.
It was John
Oh.
Paul, if I'm not
John.
mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, John Paul. Yeah, and so yeah, Dawkins actually made a funny, funny in the wrong way joke about that event in the God Delusion, which is he said what John Paul says, a maternal hand guided the bullet so that it wouldn't kill him because he didn't die, and Dawkins wonders aloud why why the maternal hand couldn't have guided the bullet away in the first place, but
Yeah, because he definitely did get actually shot. So
he did get shot. Yep. I do not recommend. Just side note: don't recommend the God Delusion if you want to actually know about the arguments for philosophy of atheism.
Oh my
So-
goodness, no, it's horrible.
I only read it because like I like Dawkins, and I was like, might as well. So
Yeah, no,
But-
that's not a good enough reason in my book.
Yeah,
It's
read,
it's a horrible book.
Sobel or Oppie or one of the other philosophers of religion, if you want to know
People
about
who
it.
actually know what they're talking about.
Read Dawkins for biology. He's got some really good biology books,
Agreed.
like The Ancestor's Tale, which you can also see on my channel. No. Anyway, next slide, please. The Holocene, 11,700 years ago to right about now. Maybe now. Actually, I think I have a slide for the Anthropocene, so we'll get there. So the first agricultural revolution occurred near the beginning. So that was when we started planting crops, like became a thing that a bunch of societies did. Like maybe some people were doing it before then, but it wasn't a big thing. But now lots of cultures around the world were starting to plant crops, domesticate various animals, and have these sedentary societies. So these societies that are not continuing to like move around and chase mammoths and things like that. But also, society does not progress linearly from a hunter-gatherer to sedentary. Different cultures have different practices depending on the season, such as planting crops in the spring and summer versus hunting and fishing in the winter. And I say that because there are some weird, like, Western-centric ideas about how cultures develop, and which include things like, oh yeah, society just progresses from like hunter-gatherer to Europe. Like, no,
Which
That's
is
not how that
especially
works at
weird
all.
to me, since if you look at the history of colonization of North America by Europeans, you see people engaging in like semi-hunter-gatherer practices in the winter,
right?
where they're like doing like ice fishing and hunting and things to help get enough food to get through the winter, and then the rest of the year they're relying on farming. Like
Yep.
that's a thing that happened. In fact, there were like whole conflicts that bordered on like small scale wars about things like whether boating rights or fishing rights took precedence because people in North America, European settlers, were so dependent on fishing to not starve.
Yep. So don't buy into the weird West-centric propaganda about
Yes, that doesn't even
cultural
actually
progression.
apply to Western humans.
Right, exactly.
It's a very bizarre thing. It's like, you guys know that you're your own evidence against this idea, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's just a little picture up there on the top right, and then on the bottom right, that is the evolution of corn or maize. So corn is a grass; it's a member of Poaceae, and you originally had like this little. I mean, there's still wild teosinte, so you can still find it and see like this is not what the corn you buy at the supermarket is. It has a lot fewer grains on it, but
And they're smaller.
they are much smaller. Yeah, and so you select for your teosinte that has more kernels on it, and keep selecting, and over time you get these larger and larger the cobs with like more kernels on them to get what we now have. That's
With
how
popcorn and masa.
Yeah, and we've also done that for like
Grits.
pretty much every plant that you eat, we have cultivated it into a variety of cultivars from its original and largely inedible form.
Yeah, unless
Like-
you're going out collecting wild berries, you're probably not eating any non-domesticated, non-genetically engineered plants.
Right, which is why when a certain Ray Comfort, cough cough, said, "How could the banana have evolved?" I don't know. I can't do a Kiwi
Yeah,
accent.
he said the same thing about apples. Like he's gone on
Yep.
about like several different plants, all of which have been heavily genetically modified by humans intentionally to make them better food.
Here's the
It's
thing,
like,
Ray.
you're right. They are designed,
Right, these were all intelligently designed.
just not directly by God.
Kent Hovind, also fun fact, did the same thing with broccoli.
Yep.
He thought broccoli evolved, which it didn't. Well, it did, but by human direct interference.
Right.
So maybe do the smidgenest bit of research before you go out making claims.
No, because their audiences aren't going to call them on any of that because they're not going to do the research either.
That's true. Also,
And
you
the
guys
ones who do just leave.
That's true. Yeah, they're like, I became disillusioned, and then they go to the other side. But the rest of the audience is not going to check it out.
No.
They're just not going to do it. You guys should see like what wild asparagus looks like. It looks like really, really tall asparagus with lots of little branches on it. It's kind of cool. Anything you'd like to add?
Nah, I think it's fine.
Okay, next slide, please. Yep. Agriculture developed in a whole bunch of places, kind of all at once. Why that is I think sort of up for debate. It's like I think it got drier at this period in time, and so maybe like it was a bit harder to pursue food. So also growing food, which these cultures probably did like in small part already. It became just more of a thing. Like they switched more towards growing and less towards pursuit.
Well, humans had probably already noticed that if they dumped like seeds from the plants they were eating in certain areas, that like the next year there would be food plants in that area.
Right.
And it's not a big leap from like just noticing this fact to starting to have intentional areas where you put seeds to then learning that certain things you could do to this area would make the plants grow faster or more abundantly. And then you're on your way to the basics of cultivation. And at first, it doesn't have to be a very intensive thing, right? Like you do a little bit of tilling and a little bit of intentional planting, but these are still primarily wild plants, so they're going to grow just fine on their own for the most part. And then you can just come back during your hunter-gatherer wanderings to the place where you have some quote-unquote crops. Right. And then from there, it can take off into more and more specialized areas where you make plants that are better and better human food, but worse and worse at being wild plants, which means that they have to require more and more attention, and that's just kind of a feedback loop.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Fishhead Salad said, creationists do not understand the human genetic manipulation when it comes to food and animals like corn, banana, dogs, cats, and bovine. Why are they so stupid about these things? Well, if anybody can figure out the answer to that, please let us know.
It's intentional on the part of the professionals.
Yeah, for professionals, yeah, it's probably.
And for the non-professionals, they're just trusting someone who they think has their best interests and is the person who's telling them the real truth. Right. Because they think that the people who are opposing them have dark ulterior motives. There, I can say it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Next slide, please. Human migrations. Okay, so this is from an interesting little paper. So we talk about this paper in the Tasmanian's Tale with regard to when the last common ancestor of all extant humans lived. Which may have been just a few thousand years ago, weirdly enough. And so, if you like, one way you can look at like trying to figure out when the last common ancestor of a population lived is like you take the second log of the size of the population, which works for some populations, like if they're pretty much genetically isolated. But if they're not, then you have to do obviously a lot more complicated calculations. Because if you take the whole world population and you do the second log of it, you get like the Middle Ages, which probably not when the last common ancestor of all extant humans lived. But interestingly, they actually only lived just a few thousand years ago. So not that super far in the distant past. But what we do know, I want to add, is there was never a point in human history where there were only two people. We also know that. So,
or 8 for that matter.
Or 8, yep. So this paper came out of these researchers trying to figure out like when was approximately the last common ancestor of all extant humans, and so that's where that came from. So you see all these different little migration events where humans are trading DNA. So yeah, check out the Ancestors Tale series, folks.
Also, I do like that you can see on this chart that yeah, in fact, Madagascar was not settled from Africa directly. It was settled from Austronesia, which is, it always struck me as really weird given how close it is to Africa, but it turns out that like, yeah, that's just kind of how the ocean currents work, and it's actually not that easy with without like motors to go from Africa to Madagascar. So,
very interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. Which also probably explains why it is so isolated in terms of its biogeography, despite it being close enough to Africa that you would think there'd be a whole lot more overlap, but there really isn't. And I think it is, in fact, because of those currents.
Right. Okay, well, fair enough.
Do I have a paper to back it up? No, but I still think it's pretty reasonable, and I'm pretty sure I could find a paper if I really had to.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, recent extinction, the stellar sea cow, the great auk, the passenger pigeon. Big sad.
Also, how come the dodo isn't up there? It's another pigeon.
Well, we can only have one pigeon, and I chose the passenger pigeon. So
fine.
Also, the producer is Dutch, and they wiped out the dodo.
Well, I mean, look, Jackson is a U.S. citizen. They're the ones who primarily wiped out the passenger pigeons.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a fact. Yeah. Well, sorry, folks. My bad. You said what is the difference between a pigeon and a dove? Tell me.
There isn't one. It's just that some of them get called pigeons. That's it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. It's like the difference between geese and ducks. It's like, if it's got a long enough neck, you might call it a goose, but they're actually in the same family, and the long neck versus short neck groups don't form clades. That's a thing that just varies within various clades.
Right, like frogs and toads.
Yeah.
Yep. Taxonomy is arbitrary.
Well, in this case, the human common names are even more arbitrary than taxonomy.
Common names are the worst. Next slide, please. The Anthropocene. I think this is the last one.
Does it exist?
I would say
it is the last one.
So this paper, Geology of Mankind by Paul Crutzen, who actually won the Nobel Prize. I happen to agree with him. He makes a very good point about like how much change we've done to the environment in such a short amount of time. And folks, it's not just like, that we've changed the atmosphere, but like we've changed the flow of various rivers, and we've changed the distribution of dirt, in certain areas, and we've changed the distribution of animals and plants and all this other stuff. Like we've affected a very large part of like the crust of the earth, right? There's a lot we've done, I would say. So and as a result, already we have a geologic impact that, thousands of years from now, anthropologists or archaeologists or paleontologists, whatever, will be able to like look at that fossil record and say, yeah, this is where we start to see major mining events occurring and pollution on this level and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm fine with saying there's an Anthropocene.
Okay, but here's my counterpoint, because I'm skeptical of the idea that we should really call this the Anthropocene. If you even say doubled the current extent of industrial civilization on Earth, and then eventually maybe either humans get gone, or they figure out a way to more sustainably exist on Earth, and then you say extend geology a few million years into the future, the current period is not going to be noticeable as a separate geological period. It's going to be like the mid-Holocene carbon isotopic excursion.
The Anthropocene excursion.
No, it's going to be the Holocene carbon isotopic excursion, because I don't think it's going to be a long enough period to warrant its own separate name.
I mean,
it could also be the end Holocene, a carbon isotopic excursion followed by a different period that is not primarily dominated by mankind, because I don't think mankind can keep doing this for long enough for the Anthropocene to really warrant an entire geological period.
I mean, mayhaps. Mayhaps. So there you go. We're up to today. We're doing stuff to the planet in irreparable ways. Go team. And it's, yay, look at the time. We did it, Dapper. We covered the whole of Earth history.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Benthoven, Tapioca Weasel, Denny5252, Eleron Teller, Furavara, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babby, San, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bead, Scriptic Mystic, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, and Pat L. Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting, so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.